Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker this evening, a gentleman originally from Cuba, but he has lived on South Beach most of his life. He was involved in boxing for more than 30 years. He was appointed to the Miami Beach Boxing Commission in 1979, later served as the chairman. In 1984, he was named by then Florida Governor Bob Graham, as the first executive director of the then State Athletic Commission. Of course, now they call it the Florida Boxing Commission. He also has served as vice president of the WBA. He's had a very distinguished career in boxing, and he has some great stories about Florida boxing that he'd like to share with you. Please give a warm Florida Boxing Hall of Fame welcome for Mr. Jimmy Resnick.
Oh boy, same problem. Anyway, congratulations to all the inductees. And let me just say, as I was preparing this speech, there's a quote that I like so much because it's about life, it's about sports, it's about everything. And it says, the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in battle. I'm applying this to this speech because I didn't get to practice this speech, so I hope I don't bleed too much. We left Cuba in 1960. We settled in Miami Beach, and my parents had a store, a candy store, right across the Fifth Street gym. I was 10 years old, and I went across the street to this place whenever I could, and this was this smelly, muggy, stinky place, and these guys were hitting each other, and what did I know? But I started to hear the trash talking at that time, the banter, and I kind of enjoyed it, and every time I went, it was kind of a weird thing to see for a 10-year-old. But I thought I enjoyed it. I didn't know that. And then you fast forward now, 19 years later, and I find myself appointed to the Miami Beach Boxing Commission. Don't ask me how, I still don't know how, but I get appointed, and there's me and there's 4 other gentlemen who were the legends of, they were there the Muhammad Ali days, and here I am, and I remember I sit there my first meeting, absolutely not knowing anything, liking the sport because I love sports, and I get tapped in the back, and I turn around, there's Chris Dundee behind me, and I said, oh boy, he's gonna kill me for all the times he caught me sneaking into his wrestling shows. And no, he said, young man, I want you to count on me for any advice. Here's my home number, here's my address. Please come see me, and I'll be glad to give you any advice you need. Now, I figured that he gave me that advice because he couldn't give advice to the other 4 guys because they knew everything. But I tell you, it happened to be by luck that his home was exactly in the middle between my office and my home, and I visited him a lot, and I learned a lot from him. A great guy, a great guy. He would tell me when to do this, when to go to media. He always would point out things that went wrong with the commission or things that went right, and I really listened to him, and he was my mentor. I also had the opportunity to listen to Hank Kaplan, Irv Abramson, Mel Ziegler. I had a lot of good teachers, and I tried to learn as much as I could. As I began attending the fights, I started seeing some weird things happening. I saw some strange decisions. I also saw some strange refereeing decisions. There were referees doing 8 counts, standing 8 counts rather. And at the same time, in one particular fight that I remember, at that time the referee and the 2 judges used to judge, and the referee and one judge up to the 8th round was on one end, and the other judge was completely the opposite. And I said, something's wrong here. So I went over to him politely, and I said, let me ask you something. What corner is Rodriguez in? What corner is Gonzalez in? He said, well, Rodriguez is in the red corner. I said, no. He's in the blue corner. He's in the red corner. Oh, boy, I didn't know that. And I said, oh, boy, we have to do something. The next day, I called Ed Levine. And I said, Eddie, I know you like boxing. Would you like to become a judge? And Eddie said, what do I have to do? I said, I don't know, but just come on over and just get behind some of these judges. You probably can teach them how to judge. And after a few fights, I'm sure we'll make you a judge. And it was Eddie Levine, Mark Schechner, then Eddie brought in John Rupert and Bobby Ballo. And we brought in also some referees like Armando Garcia, who later became executive director of the California Boxing Commission. And then about 8 or 9 years later, I was on a trip. I met Paul Herman. And I said, Paul, we started talking about boxing. And I said, Paul, would you like to also judge? And by the way, Eddie, congratulations on the award you're about to get after my long speech. No, it's not award. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so it was 1982. And I got a call from Bob Arum. I had met Bob Arum through some of the fights. And Bob Arum calls me and he says, and Bruce, you'll get a kick out of this. He says, I have this fight with Alexis Arguello and Aaron Pryor. And Las Vegas is bidding, I'm about to give it to Las Vegas, but maybe Miami will be a good place to have it. And I knew that that fight belonged in Miami. And so did Bob. And so he called me, he asked me if I knew any promoters or anybody that would like to co-promote the fight. And I started making some calls, and all of a sudden, I speak to Walter Alvarez, and Walter says, yes, I'd love to do it, and he forms a group called the Top 10. Now, what goes on here, Bob called me, I'm about to come down to sign the contract. Are these guys for real? I said, Bob, I think these guys are for real. Now, they're all sitting in a room, this group of Top 10, and Bob is about to walk in, and they're writing on a blackboard all the demands they're going to make of Bob. Bob walks into the room. They put, hi Bob, how are you? And they put the demands in, and Bob goes crazy. And Bruce, you know, he started cursing, and he just walked out of the room. Well, to make a long story short, they chased after him, and they wound up giving him their cars, their homes, their wives, and everything like that, and they got the fight. So now the fireworks started with this fight. There was no Miami commission at the time. There was only a Miami Beach commission. It was, but it was inactive. And all of a sudden, they rushed to appoint, the commissioners and the mayor rushed to appoint 10 people, political appointments, who really didn't know about boxing. I got a call from Walter Alvarez, Bob Arum, and they said, this fight is about to go on, and they don't know what's going on. I go to them, they asked me to go see the mayor. I go see the mayor, and the mayor says, please join the Miami Commission also. We need somebody that knows. Now, what did I know about boxing? I was into it 3 years, but I guess I knew more than the other 10 people that they had, so I decided, fine, if you want to appoint me, and I got appointed to that. Then, as the fight was about to take place, we had the problem with the referee. The referee was Stanley Christodoulou. Stanley Christodoulou was from South Africa, and he was one of the best referees in the world. I had dinner with him a few days before the fight, and of course, the Aaron Pryor group didn't want to have the fight because they said it's apartheid, and we want to change referees. I had dinner with him 2 days before the fight, and he was about 6'6", and Eddie, you know, he's one of the best referees in the world, a great guy. He had shown me pictures of a fight he had just done in Korea with these two little guys, and he did the fight on one knee. Imagine a referee on one knee, because these guys were so short. This guy was fantastic, referee. Anyway, we got past that somehow. Maybe I think Bob might have offered Pryor more money. And then the day of the fight, there was a bomb threat that the Sandinistas were going to blow up the Orange Bowl. We got past that too, and I guess the fight started. Now, supervising the fight for the WBA at that time was Gilberto Mendoza. Gilberto Mendoza, who would later become president of WBA 2 years later, we became friends through that fight, and the fight went on, and it was a great fight. Now, Alexis Arguello gets knocked out on the 14th round. Everybody was shocked. It was like silence because they thought he would. What people didn't realize that Alexis had gone up from 126 to 140, and Aaron Pryor was a natural 140. But he was our hero. His record was great, and he was very popular. So now he gets knocked out. And one of the things that I try to do in boxing was that, I'm not a doctor, but whenever a boxer got knocked out, I always liked to go to his dressing room to make sure that he was well attended to. And so I ran to the dressing room after the fight, and it was it was Alexis Arguello with Bill Miller. There were just the two of them in the dressing room. And Alexis says to me, Resnick, I got to tell you something. I've had over 100 fights, and this is the first time ever that I've been hit with two hands at the same time. And he meant it. He meant it. He said the punches were so fast. And then we screwed up with that urine situation and stuff like that, but then we got vindicated when Alexis got knocked out the next time. There was no problem. It was a new commission. We didn't know who was supposed to do the testing. So it went on and on. But anyway, it worked out great. We had a great turnout, and and today, one of the greatest fights ever. I also became very defensive of our sport. You know, when you're part of boxing, you want to make sure that it's kept as clean as possible. And anytime there was something, there was a death, somebody got hurt, the whole world would want to ban boxing. There was articles, you know. And of course, they didn't want to ban auto racing or other sports, but I got very defensive about that. And when Sugar Ray Leonard suffered a detached retina, I started writing articles. I started going on some interviews, and I wrote to all the commissions in the United States to try to stop him from fighting. And one day, I get a call, and he says, "Hi, this is Howard Cosell." Now, I didn't believe it was him. I thought it was some impersonator and stuff like that. The more I kept talking to him, it was him. It was him. He said he was doing the same thing, and of course, he could get it done much easier than me. He was doing the same thing, and what he said is, you know, I have a summer home in Key Biscayne. I would like to meet with you, and let's see if we can get this campaign going real big. I don't believe that Sugar Ray Leonard, it would be bad for his health, for his eyes, to fight with it after having a detached retina. Anyway, we set up a time to go to his house. He called me the last minute that he had to go back to New York. I never got to talk to him. I never got to see him again. But just the experience of talking to him about this, you know, gave me a lot of strength as to try to do it. Of course, Sugar Ray Leonard did fight again, and so be it. But we tried. The most important thing is we try to keep everything so that people can, you know, so that the sport can remain safe, because one more death or somebody getting hurt, it's going to make it more calls for banning of the sport, because we don't have a commissioner, national commissioner, so we have to all fend for ourselves. Oh, then came 1984. In 1984, there were some guys from New Jersey that bought a bunch of the Art Deco hotels in Miami Beach. No, they were not the Sopranos, don't worry. Now, they decided they wanted to have a fight on the ocean. And Don King co-promoted this fight, and we set up the ring on the sand, on the ocean, about 50 yards away from the water. And it was two Bantam World title fights. Garza was one, and then it was Davila against Sanchez, and they were defending. Now, comes the last fight, which is the Davila-Sanchez fight, and Sanchez is winning the first 6 rounds, and it starts to rain. And it starts to rain not this way, but this way. I mean, the wind is bringing the water this way. Between the 7th or 8th and 9th round, the ring girls were going up, and with the cards, they would take the cards and sweep the water. They would sweep the water right out of the ring, and one of those waves came right on top of me and wiped the ink off the scoring cards. Right after the rain, Davila got a second win and knocked him out. Imagine what would have happened if this would have gone to a decision. I would have been up there in the ring, and I would have said, the winner is nobody. Two to 3 minutes after we left the ring, see, God works in strange ways. 2 or 3 minutes, the lights came crashing down, fire in the ring. It would have electrocuted a lot of people. But thank God there was nobody there. So, you know, some things are meant to happen. In 1984, the Florida State Boxing Commission was formed. Florida State Athletic Commission was formed, and I was privileged by Governor Bob Graham to appoint me as the first commissioner of the commission. We had our first meeting in Miami Beach, and we went over we started writing the rules, and there was Irv Abramson, Ferdy Pacheco, Chris and Angelo, Hank Kaplan, and they all gave input. And it was so great that these are the guys that really gave the meaning to the commission, that really gave the first rules and regulations and were the foundation for this commission. And we miss them all. We miss them all. But they were my inspiration also for the commission. I learned a lot from them. That same year, it was the convention of WBA, and Gilberto Mendoza asked me to run for vice president. And if Gilberto Mendoza says I'm going to run for vice president, I run for vice president. And I got lucky. I got elected first vice president. I wonder how, but Gilberto said, you're going to be elected, and I got elected in Venezuela. And one of the perks of getting elected first vice president, you got to choose what fights you want to supervise. And the greatest fight, one of the greatest fights was coming up, that was Hagler and Hearns. And I got very lucky because I said, I'd like to supervise that fight. And Gilberto says, okay, you can do it. So in 1985, at the beginning of 85, Tommy Hearns set up camp at the Eden Rock Hotel, which is right by my house. And that's where I got married. And I had to say something about my wife when we got married. Anyway, in those sparring sessions at the Eden Rock, in the lobby of the Eden Rock, Muhammad Ali would come, and George Foreman would come, and Fraser would come. It was incredible. They'd be there in the afternoon, whenever there was the fights. It was great. You just go over there to visit, and you see everybody coming in and out, right in the middle of the lobby of the Eden Rock Hotel. I struck a friendship with Emmanuel Stewart, and he said to me, you know, he found out that I had a satellite dish at that time. At that time, the satellite dishes were the size of a house. And he said, you know, there's some fights at the Kronk Gym. I'd like to see if I can come over to your house and, you know, watch it. I said, absolutely. And he says, Tommy Hearns would like to go. I said, yeah, of course, no problem. At the same time, I invited some of my friends. I invited Chris Dundee, and he came. And all of a sudden, about 25 people show up at my house, and my satellite dish and the receiver was in my bedroom on the second floor. And so they all walk into the house. It was great. And then you have there Chris Dundee and Emmanuel Stewart, and they're just going back and forth. I wasn't paying attention to the fight. I was just paying attention to the talking. And he would say, hey, Manny, what do you think of this? Oh, Chris, what do you... And it went on, and I was soaking it all in. I mean, these two guys, how much experience and what they went through, and we were all soaking it in. As a matter of fact, nobody was paying attention. They were just talking as they were going back and forth. And then my wife walks into the room, and she says, this looks like a slumber party I wasn't invited to. Everybody was all over my bed, but it was great. I really enjoyed it, and just wonderful. I mean, boxing at that time, those years, was so much fun. I mean, you had Hagler, Hearns, you had Sugar Ray, you had Duran, and I mean, you just had, it was an era of boxing that I was there at the right time, at the right place, and I really enjoyed it. Then came the fight, the Hagler-Hearns fight. And I find myself next in the middle of the ring in front of, there were 15,000, but I thought there were 15 million people in the parking lot of Caesar's Palace. And I said to myself again, just like I said in 1979, I said, what am I doing here? It was like a dream. It was like a dream. And I'm standing there in the middle of the ring, and every celebrity and every boxing person, I mean, it was amazing. And they all got up into the ring and everything like that. I thought I was in a dream. And then, of course, when they announced supervisor representing WBA in the state of Florida, I was so proud. I was proud for the state. I was proud for myself. I was proud for the WBA. And then that fight took place. It lasted 3 rounds. By the way, I was able to supervise Hagler Mugabe the year afterwards, and then Hagler Leonard I did not. But nobody talks about the Hagler Mugabe fight, which was the best of the 3 fights. And it was a war. But anyway, the fight takes place. I put the belt on Hagler, and then I do some paperwork, and then I said to myself, you know, I got to run to the dressing room. So I run to the dressing room, and by mistake, I go into Hagler's dressing room, and he's there with the Petronelli, but with Goody and Pat Petronelli. And as I'm about to say, I'm in the wrong dressing room, congratulations, the door opens up, and it's Hearns. He walked into I've never seen this before. Tommy Hearns walks into Hagler's dressing room, and the first thing he says to him, did your wire come in? And he says, yes, my wire came in. Did your wire come in? And then they hug each other, and they put their arm around each other. I snapped a picture, which I later sent to HBO, but I've never seen a loser go into the dressing room. That only happens in wrestling when everybody's in the same dressing room. But it was great. It was just a great experience for me to see that, and the sportsmanship that these two guys went with. I'm sorry if I'm going too long, but Willie Martinez then became our next promoter of record. And him and Don King got together, and they decided they wanted to have a fight. There was 2 title fights. It was Camacho, Boza Edwards, Livingston Bramble, and Edwin Rosario. And they were about to take out of Florida, went by. I said, wait 1 second. And I called this fellow who was his name was in the tennis stadium in Miami Beach. And I said, Abel, do you think we can turn this tennis stadium into a fighting venue? He says, we can do anything. I took Don King and Willie. We opened up the stadium, and we turned that into, it was a great event also. We turned the tennis stadium. Later on, he also promoted Happy Laura on a barge. So here, during my tenure of boxing, we had a football stadium, we had a fight on the ocean, we had a fight in the tennis stadium, we had a fight on the barge. I don't know what other venues we could have, maybe in an airplane hangar or something, but it was just great, so many different things and so many different events. Oh, my last one, there was Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke decided to become a fighter. I don't know why, he couldn't fight. But Mickey Rourke is Mickey Rourke. So my duty was to make sure that whoever he fought couldn't punch. But unfortunately, every professional boxer punches. Anyway, Mickey went through, he finally realized that he couldn't fight. His record was 10-0 or 10-1, but you know, I don't know. Anyway, he then doesn't get a job. He gets blackballed in Hollywood for 2 or 3 years. And I called Mickey. I said, Mickey, how you doing? He says, you know, everybody thinks I'm into drugs, and nobody will hire me. And the reason I'm this way is because I took so many punches that I'm walking around groggy and everything like that. But people think I'm into drugs, and I'm clean. Isn't it ironic that he comes back, and what makes him back, and now he's become a star again, the movie The Wrestler? Isn't it funny that that movie is what made it back again, which had to do with the same type of things like that, but that was Mickey. One more thing that I wasn't going to say, but I saw Pinklon Thomas today, and I told him about it. We arranged a charity fight with Pinklon Thomas and the mayor. I refereed it. I don't know how to referee a fight, but I just stood there. And with the mayor of Miami Beach, with Alex Dowd. And Pinklon was trying not to hit him, but he hit him, and he gave him a black eye. After the fight, we want to put ice on Alex, and he says, no, I want to keep this black eye. Alex went around City Hall telling everybody, I got a black eye from Pinklon Thomas. Look, I got a black eye from Pinklon Thomas. I think that when the thing subsided, he painted a black eye just so he could have it for the rest of his life. And Pinklon, that was great. We raised a lot of money for charity, and it was really, really good. Nice of you to do that. At that time, you were a world champion, by the way. So, and he said he had sparred with Muhammad Ali, but I think Muhammad Ali really didn't spar with him. So anyway, that's it, I guess. And I just want to say that I was very, very lucky that I was in boxing at the time that I was in boxing. It was an era that, again, I don't know that we can ever duplicate. And you know, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And you know, things happen for a reason, and that was a reason. And I'm very, very happy. I just want to say I'm humbled. I got reappointed to the commission by Tampa's Bob Martinez, and then he was nice enough when he lost to Lawton Childs to protect me and ask Lawton Childs to reappoint me, and Lawton Childs did reappoint me, even though I'm a Republican. And he did reappoint me for the next 4 years. So I'm very proud to say that I was appointed by Bob Graham, Bob Martinez, and Lawton Childs. And of course, after the 4 years, he didn't have any commitment, so I got off the commission. But it was great, and I wouldn't trade these 30 years for anything in the world. And I just want to last say that I miss a lot Hector Camacho was a good friend. I miss a lot Emmanuel Stewart, and I miss most of all Alexis Arguello, who I spoke to a couple of weeks before he committed suicide or he was murdered or whatever. These are people that, you know, and again, and I'm sorry I'm taking so much time, but, you know, these boxers, they might look in the ring, they might look to the media as really bad guys or mean guys or that, but 99% of them have good hearts, they're good people, and really, 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 you know, they know where they came from and they know where they're going, and I got to know a lot of them, and again, I appreciate it. I'm repeating myself, but again, it was great, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Resnick. Some great stories.